Did you know that the federal government is ruining what once was the best educational system in the world with the wrong-headed legislation known as No Child Left Behind? Did you know that by meddling in areas in which Congress is brain dead, government is transforming our children into test takers instead of educated people? Did you know that education has been taken out of the hands of our teachers and placed in the hands of politicians who have no conception of what is needed in our schools? And did you know that these politicians think that punishing teachers and administrators is the answer to educational excellence? They could not be more in error.
Well, in my new book, The Death and Life of the Great American School System, I explain why I've changed my view about No Child Left Behind. I supported it 8 years ago, as did 90% of the Congress. Ted Kennedy was one of its big boosters. It's been a disaster. We have seen virtually no improvement on the very things that have been tested for 8 years. No improvement in reading, very small improvements in math. In the meanwhile, our kids are not learning history, civics, geography, the arts, literature, science, nothing else.
Policy analyst Richard Rothstein worries about the way states like Tennessee measure performance by relying heavily on test scores.
The best way to get higher test scores is to prep for tests, to give a lot of instruction in test preparation and test-taking skills, not in the underlying subject. It's to focus on the children who are closest to the passing point and ignore other children. There are all kinds of ways that we can boost test scores that don't contribute to improved instruction.
All a teacher has to do is go into his or her classroom, close the door, and start test prep.
At the end of the day, there's very little that we can do to mitigate.
The Bush administration and now the Obama administration have perpetuated this horrible No Child Left Behind law that is the worst thing that's happened to American kids in our lifetimes. It has set back American education for decades. It's the monster that is handicapping our children from learning how to think and learning how to learn, but just become test takers who may not know anything about the subject matter at hand. This monstrous legislation focuses on a once-a-year test in reading and math to the exclusion of all other vital and important subjects that kids need for a well-rounded education. It punishes teachers and administrators for factors for which they have no control. All of the responsibility for education is placed on the backs of teachers. It requires nothing of children or parents. If children refuse to work at their subjects, if they refuse to do homework, if they refuse to even come to school, the teachers are blamed. If parents do not encourage their children and imbue a sense of importance of education in their children, this legislation also blames the teachers. Now the Obama administration is trying to force states to expand charter schools when research shows that most charter schools are no better and many are inferior to public schools. And it is forcing the evaluation of teachers by use of the test scores of their children, when in fact no teacher can be responsible for the learning or lack thereof performed by all of the previous teachers. And most of all, the most inane aspect, this legislation requires all children to score proficient, which is above average, by 2014. Only in Lake Wobegon would that make any sense. This horrible legislation is transforming our children into test takers who can fill out bubble test forms without necessarily having any subject matter knowledge. They are learning to be excellent test takers and not excellent thinkers. Over their lifetimes, most will probably be required to learn several new jobs or occupations. So they should be learning to learn and not learning to take tests. Yet, the teachers are forced to teach testing and not subject matter in order to keep their jobs. This legislation has turned our education system on its head for no good reason. No Child Left Behind has narrowed the curriculum dramatically. In some schools, there's no time for recess. and just enough time to gulp down a sandwich in order to concentrate on the annual dreaded test. Research shows that important subjects are now being de-emphasized, even though they're vital. Civics, which is so essential to producing a well-informed voting citizens, is being shut out. Social studies, science, art and music teaching has declined by between 28 and 35%, and physical education, which is so important for kids' health, has been reduced dramatically. What are we thinking? It's time to slay the monster and repeal No Child Left Behind. It's way past time that we let teachers teach and we let students learn.